The normal bell-shaped curve of distribution. According to it, all things are glommed in the center, and only small numbers of anything are on the extremes. Take IQs. Average is 100, but at 125, our schools call a person gifted. But the extreme IQ of, say, 586 is way out there on a normal bell-shaped curve. The love story of Milton Quiggle demonstrates that in love, too, there are the fringes. Let's begin with genetics. Most of us have double strands of DNA that carry the genetic code that directs our biological development. It's all there, finger codes, nose codes, you name it. It's on the DNA double helix. Well, as chance would have it, someone had to have some extra codes here and some missing codes there. A unique person on the very edge of the normal distribution. Such a one was Milton Quiggle. First off, Milton was given an unfortunate name. Milton. This is not a good name for a child. It's a good name for an old man cousin who lives in another town. A cousin of strange reputation. A cousin who does things you would expect of a person named Milton, like matching a plaid shirt with striped pants. Actually, to be a Milton is to be handicapped in life at its beginning. Milton was a scrawny baby. Ugly, actually. He was one of those babies at whom people would look and say things like, "He must be a very good baby," while secretly thanking their lucky stars not have had such an ugly kid of their own. Milton's mother didn't like him. She also didn't like Milton's father. In fact, she didn't like much of anything, with one exception. She loved Isaac Asimov. She read and reread everything he had ever written. Milton's father, Horace, liked Milton a lot. He had great dreams for Milton. He fantasized all sorts of wonderful successes for him. Star kindergarten student, moved ahead 3 grades. Great trumpet player. All-state algebra scholar, scholarships, job offers, love. He fantasized for Milton all of these things. Sad thing was, Horace never spoke to Milton. He didn't know how to approach him, never having been around babies. And as the years went by, he became entrapped into silence and with the unspoken dreams until they finally faded. In elementary school, Milton was known as Milton the Skeleton. He thought of himself as Milt or Milty or Quig, a name with a nice Latin ring to it. But no, he was to be Milton the Skeleton. He had not a middle name to fall back on, as in M. Jonathan Quiggle. No, his parents, in their one act of frivolity, had used an old Jerry Lewis joke in naming their son. He was in fact named Milton Quiggle. Milton, at home with his silent father and reading mother, did not think of himself as an unfortunate child. For at home, in his room, Milton with his fringed DNA codes had strange thoughts. Thoughts the like of which you and I can only guess with our normal brains. And he thought those strange thoughts, young Milton would sit on his bed with his legs crossed, his eyes rolled up in his head, and hum songs. And as he hummed them, he transposed those songs to a minor key, giving it a bit of a funeral tinge. In his small world, in spite of the kidding at school, his unfortunate appearance, and general awkwardness, Milton was not an unhappy child. To Milton, friendless and alone, all was normal. As his classmates went through teenage growth spurts and bodily changes, nothing happened to Milton. He was 3rd grade size the day he graduated from high school. The TV camera that was taping the graduation ceremony missed Milton as he walked by to get his diploma. He was only 4½ feet tall. Upon graduation, as his friends drifted off to college or got jobs or got married, he joined the service. Milton just went home and sat in his room, not knowing what to do next. What he did do was this. Every week he went to the supermarket with his parents. He especially liked the cheese selection. For Milton, among his other quirks, had a very sensitive nose. He could smell odors you and I have never experienced. And the cheese section, with its bries, camberets, cheddars, and longhorn cheeses, was a real treat to him. His very favorite was Velveeta, which, if you read the fine print, you will find it isn't cheese at all, rather is a cheese food. Milton thought Velveeta was a fine example of what people can do. He thought it would be fun to work for Kraft. As the years passed, Milton Quiggle's routine did not vary, until one day, when he was 27 years old and his body began to change. Milton began to grow up, physically, and he did it quickly. Within 6 months, he was a fully physically mature person. His appearance was not the norm. Milton had an Ichiban crane aspect to him. His neck was very long and skinny. Sometimes in the high wind, Milton's head would wobble. When this happened, Milton liked the way things seemed to sway to and fro. In a strange way, Milton was not unattractive. His appearance was sort of tabloid alien-like. He even had very large, dark eyes. His eyes were so large and so dark that when people looked into him, they got the willies. Milton, in his 30th year, was alone. His parents had lost interest in each other, in Milton, and in everything in general, and they drifted away, leaving Milton the house and the family car. A wonderful 1969 Rambler American with a push-button radio. Milton got a part-time job selling popcorn at the movie theater. He didn't actually make the popcorn. What he did was melt the yellow stuff they put on the popcorn and call it butter. With his sensitive nose, Milton loved this job. The popcorn room had a wonderful, slightly rancid aroma. The fumes careened around Milton's amazing sinuses, making him very, very happy. Some nights, Milton hid in the popcorn room and sat there in the dark after the rest of the staff had gone home. He sat there, alone in the totally dark room, breathing the wonderful odors of theater popcorn, popcorn oil, popcorn salt, and butter substitute. It was during one of these nights that Milton Quiggle's life was to take a strange turn. Milton was in the popcorn room in a near coma of olfactory ecstasy when he was abruptly yanked into reality by a shriek that made his heart stand still. Fearing nothing, Milton Quiggle ran into the mezzanine. He had his trusty flashlight with him. There, on the floor, was a woman of Milton's age, roughly, rolling around, tearing madly at her hair. As Milton approached, he spotted it. A huge theater bat had flown into her hair just as the old wives' tales warned and was biting her fingers with its horrible yellow vampire teeth. Milton said, "Be still, young lady. I'll save you." Then he ran over to the mezzanine couch, sat in his cross-legged position, rolled his eyes back up in his head, and did nothing. Or so she thought. She yelled at him, "Don't just sit there, help me! This bat is tearing out my beautiful golden hair!" Unbeknownst to her, Milton was doing something. Among his many genetic deviations, Milton had the amazing ability to tighten his vocal cords way beyond the norm. As he sat there, Milton Quiggle was calling forth with a wonderful, natural sound, the queen of the bats, from the very bowels of the theater. He could sense her stirring down there in the basement where the dressing rooms had been in the old vaudeville days, and he sent forth the old bat sound he knew. Fortunately for the woman, it was a love song of the Brazilian fruit bat. Milton heard it once many years ago in a bat hall in Busch Gardens in Tampa, Florida. It was eerie and mournful, yet strangely passionate. And now he put it to good use, singing it as beautifully as any Brazilian bat, calling to its bat love in the rainforests. Up they came, the queen and her escorts. Even the woman could hear them. Hundreds of bats swept up the stairs, through the great auditorium, and up the balcony stairs to the second floor mezzanine. Milton rose from the couch, pulled open the accordion doors on the balcony, ran up to the balcony stairs, and called the queen bat back into the auditorium. As they swept by, the woman attacking bat unraveled itself in the woman's hair and joined the others on their mad love flight. Milton closed the doors and walked back to the woman. She looked up and said, "Thank you. Thank you. I thought I was a goner." "What happened?" Milton asked. She said, "I was in the restroom when the movie ended. They turned the lights off, and I remembered this couch and felt my way back out here to spend the night when this bat brushed my face. On the second pass, it hit my hair, and you know the rest. By the way, my name is Millie Ferguson. I really appreciate you doing whatever you did." Milton was not good at conversation. He said, "You're welcome. I just sang to them." Then he guided her to the door, unlocked it, and let her out. As she walked into the deserted night, her face was lit by the off and on flashing of the red neon sign from the now closed Royal Fates Bar and Grill across the street from the theater. In the blinking red light, something awakened in Milton Quiggle, and he had been stricken to the depths of his being by her beauty. Never had he noticed the gracefulness of a woman's body. Never had he felt the attraction of a woman's eyes. Never had he felt the soothing quality of a woman's voice, the wonderful femininity of a woman's face. As he stood there in the blinking light by the ticket stub stand, all these feelings swept over him. They swept over him so strongly, he actually fell down. And he got up just in time to see Millie enter a red cab with a white top and speed away. Milton Quiggle was a changed man. Now 45 years old, he went through an instant transformation. A transformation as can only happen to those on the extremes of the genetic code. Milton did not go back to the popcorn room. He ran home and called the independent cab company and asked them if he could speak to the driver of cab number 487. Milton said he thought he had left a package of Velveeta in the cab. They actually put the driver on the phone, and the driver, after heavy pleading, gave Milton the address of the woman he had picked up in the theater at 2:30 in the morning. The next day, Milton sent flowers to Millie Ferguson. The day after that, he sent a poem. And the third day, he went himself to her door. As chance would have it, Millie Ferguson was not developed from the fringes of the human genetic code. She was, in fact, right smack in the middle of the distribution of everything. She was of average intelligence, of average beauty, though not to Milton. She had an average job, she ate average food, and she was, on the average, happy. As happens to us all, her life had the normal strain of both happy and sad developments. She had been through an unhappy marriage to a Republican. One of her sons was estranged from her, and she missed him greatly. She enjoyed school and was now in the middle of her life, studying literature and enjoying it immensely. In fact, she had recently had a story published in the State University Quarterly Arts Journal. It was a story entitled Topics, concerned striving to overcome one's sense of failure. Millie lived, and with the exception of her now grown children, a life alone. This did not make her unhappy. She was more or less content with her life the day Milton Quiggle arrived on her doorstep. Milton, who did not know fear, walked right up to the door and rang the bell. Millie was somewhat surprised by his unusual appearance. Milton never looked quite right with his big head, his long skinny neck, his bobbing Adam's apple, and this day he actually had chosen a plaid shirt to wear with his favorite striped bell-bottom pants. Milton introduced himself as the man from the theater. He told Millie that she had awakened strange longings in him and that he had been able to think only of her for the past 3 days. He apologized for being so straightforward. "I am not a person of subtle speech," he told her, "but I am a person of deep feelings." Against her impulses, Millie spoke with Milton. She thanked him for helping her. As she was talking, Milton was singing the love song of the Brazilian fruit bat. He sang it with all the tenderness and love that he could muster. Millie heard not a note. She looked at the strange man, puzzled. Finally, Milton began to speak in words. He told her of his childhood, of his strange and wondrous way of seeing things, of his ability to bag groceries, of his love for popcorn and room odors. Millie was fascinated by this strange man, and she invited him in for a cup of tea. Before they knew it, the sun had gone down. Milton went back to visit Millie every evening. They talked about everything. Millie told Milton her story. He heard it in his own strange way, a way the rest of us can only imagine. Friday, Milton called Millie and asked her to go out on an actual date. He'd been reading books on courtship at the library, having no experience in such things and no friends to ask about it. He made reservations at an Italian restaurant. It was Valentine's Day. Milton had flowers delivered before he arrived. He made special arrangements to arrive in a cab 487. He wore a smart new suit from JCPenney's. Milton felt at one with the universe. Millie was excited. She hadn't been out on a date for years. She'd called her daughter in Pensacola, and they had giggled like schoolgirls. Millie didn't actually describe Milton to her daughter. She referred to him as Quig. Milton's boilerplate choice. Quig. The name brought Troy Donahue to her daughter's mind. Like Milton, Millie had bought a new dress for the evening. The followers had charmed her, though she was puzzled by the package of Velveeta that accompanied them. As they left for dinner, Millie did not even notice that it was cab number 487. Dinner went well. Milton was at his most charming, and Millie thought his formal manners were a real hoot, not realizing that Milton had been studying books of etiquette all week. She even danced the old Frank Sinatra tune, "Our Love Is Here to Stay." While they danced, they fell into each other's eyes, and Milton sang the love song of the bats. In spite of his strange appearance, Millie was attracted to Milton. His uniqueness awakened a joy in her. It had been years since Millie had experienced a truly original person, and she liked it. They talked, they danced. Milton fabricated experiences to tell her. In his innocence, Milton did not know about deceiving, but for the first time in his life, he was experiencing fear. Fear of losing Millie. And from his readings, he brought forth a life's history to intrigue her. It was the best evening after either had experienced in years, a perfect Valentine's Day. By the time cab number 487 picked them up for the ride home, Millie was almost in love. Milton had been since he saw her in the lights on that first night. Milton was a gentleman. He had been reading Anne Landers and knew not to rush things. His plan was to kiss Millie at the door and walk away humming the melody of "Our Love Is Here to Stay." As they left the cab, Milton took Millie's hand and walked up to her door. Millie was having a wonderful evening. The strange fellow was arousing long-neglected sensations in her, but she did not want a scene at the door. She was thrilled when Milton made it clear he was not coming in. Millie did not feel ready for that. She looked into Milton's large, dark eyes. She closed her eyes and tilted her head to kiss him. This she wanted to do. Milton, too, wanted to kiss her. As they stood facing each other, the wind was rustling through the trees, a romantic sound. Suddenly, there was a strong gust of wind, and then another. Millie opened her eyes to see a wild grin on Milton's face as his head wobbled back and forth on his long, thin neck in the strong night wind. She burst into tears and ran to the house. Milton ran to the theater and sat in the dark horror, ashamed for the first time of his differences. So went Milton Quiggle's Valentine's Day. Millie, embarrassed and puzzled, did not respond to Milton's calls or notes, and she refused his gifts. As times passed, Milton prospered at the theater business. He became manager and then district manager. As he became aware of the ways normal people, he found that he could manipulate them easily. 20 years passed. Milton was retiring from the theater business. Millie buried her second husband, a boring man whose only redeeming feature was the ability to pick up things with his toes. She often thought of Milton and had done so for years. She wondered if she would have been happy with him if only his head hadn't wobbled in the wind. The night of his retirement, Milton locked up the old theater by himself for the last time. As he was leaving, he saw her, walking in the blinking lights of the Royal Fates Bar and Grill. In spite of the passing of years, Milton recognized her instantly. He called out to her, "Millie, wait!" just as she was about to enter a cab. He ran across the street and took her in his arms. Overcome by years of repressed feelings, Millie hugged Milton and kissed him over and over again. All the old feelings came back and all the years fell away. Together they stood again and finally in love. They went to the amusement park, for it was the only place that was still open. They found a nightclub and they sat and talked. They even danced again. On their napkin they wrote a poem about their love. The napkin had hearts on it, for it was Valentine's Day. On the way out of the amusement park, Milton spotted a booth that said, "Make your own recordings." He pulled Millie into the booth, and together, to the melody of the love song of the Brazilian flute, that they recorded their story of their love.